some kind of god. They would try to appease them by making their sacrifice, and so they would offer it to the lightning god, and to the thunder god, and And in the early days, of the earth, of course, there were many tribes, and each tribe had its own little version of these gods, who the gods were, what they looked like, and that type of thing. And they would, make images usually which were human-like images. Now, as tribes came in contact with other tribes, certain tribes would overcome, would defeat and beat up the other tribes, kill their men, enslave their women, take their children, this type of thing, or make them as vassals under them. They would have to pay tribute or whatever back to them. And what would happen is that this particular tribe that had beaten up these other tribes and defeated them and gained control over them, their gods, they would give up and accept the gods of this conquering tribe. Right? Because the gods of the conquering tribe must be the real gods, because they help that tribe conquer everybody else. These are the more powerful gods. So, as time is progressing now, from tribes, from individual families, tribes are being formed, and tribes are turning into nations as they conquer other tribes. In that process, the number of gods are decreasing, till they reach the point of two gods, right, which is the example given of, anyway, the God of good and the God of evil. They decrease their numbers down till they reach the point of two gods, and then eventually the last step from that was to go to one God. The process of evolution as they portray it. And then they take examples of peoples around in the world today and use them as examples of the different stages. You see, they take the North American Indians and other tribal peoples of animists, etc., found in Africa, in South America, in Philippines, different parts of the world. You have people who are animists. They worship nature and the forces of nature. They say, okay, this is an example of that stage. Then they go to the Hindus. They show the Hindus, they have personal gods. Many personal gods. Each family has their own little god. An example of that stage. Then they go down to the dual. This is the Persians, right? The Zoroastrian belief, Parsis. They have a god of good, god of evil, light and dark. Fire was symbolic of the god of light, who's the god of good. And then Judaism, and they include with it Christianity as an example of arriving at monotheism. Of course, for us this is nonsensical, because like the people trying to prove evolution, they have a theory already, which they've now gone into the circumstances and just put evidence to support their theory. But actually, if one looks at the history, it's not like that. There was a time in Egypt when Egyptians arrived at the worship of one god, known as Ra. They used the sun as a symbol. I forgot the name of this particular pharaoh. Akhenaten, yes. He is the one, and in his period of time, it was about the worship of one God. After him, they went back to the worship of a number of gods. And if we look at the stage from Judaism to Christianity, we don't see polytheism to monotheism. What we see is monotheism to polytheism. Jews believe in one God, Christians made in three. So it's going in the other direction. There's corruption here. So the Islamic view is that Adam believed in one God. This was the same belief of Abraham, Moses, etc., right down to the last of the prophets, Muhammad. May God's peace and blessing be on all of them. And that it was people deviating from the teachings of the prophets that produced these beliefs in other gods. Sometimes they degenerated to polytheism, to animism, where they worship nature. Sometimes they degenerated to tritheism, like that of the Christians, or to dualism, like that of the Parsis. Now these are just varying shades of degeneration of belief, as they deviated from the main path. But the concept of God, as presented by Islam in the final form, we believe was not an evolved concept, but a constant. It was a concept held by Abraham and Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon them, and on all those in between. Now, if we look at the major religions in the world today, usually when people get to look at the major religions that have God and so on, they include Judaism. I'm not going to include Judaism. I mean, if the world population is some 3.5 or 4 billion people, and the Jews' total population is someplace around 10 million, what is the point in looking at Judaism? Huh? 40 million, some more. What is the point? What is 40 million in 4 billion? Nothing. A drop in the ocean. The numbers of Hindus, this is a number now. This is a number. 800 million. So we're going to look at world religion. This is what we have to look at. Look at the Hindus. Look at the Christians. And then look at Muslims. So, as we look at Christianity, or let's look at Hinduism first. Look at Hinduism. What we see in Hinduism is the concept that everything is God. This is the basis of Hindu concepts of God. That everything ultimately is God. They have a dual principle which they call Atman Brahman. Atman refers to the self or the soul, the self of all things. Brahman refers to the universal soul, God. That Atman, this individual self, individual human beings as well as animals and everything, this is a part of Brahman. So in the end what you're saying is that everything is really God. What they portray is that God, from God, human beings split off, you could say, or came into being. Some came into being from his head, this is the Brahmin class, upper caste. Some from his arms and body, some from his legs, and then some from his feet, the Shudras at the very bottom, the untouchables coming after them. The society is divided up into castes depending on which part of God you were created from. Their belief is that human being strives to reach a stage where he becomes one with God again in the end of the whole process. His life is a life on a wheel, the wheel of reincarnation. When he dies, he is reincarnated. He comes back into the life again.